Hello friends. So in the previous classes of the ecology, we have discussed the ecosystem concept and structure and functions of the ecosystem. That continue with another concept, that's the ecological succession. So first go to the term the succession. The what is meant by succession? So generally succession means when one thing is replaced by the other and the process is continuous till the final stage is reached. That is called as a succession. The succession term was first used by Hart and based on his observation, so he has mentioned the pioneer and the climax community. Under that, the important aspects in the universe syllabus, that's a ecological succession. Ecological succession is nothing but the process of changing in the species structure of an ecological community over the time. Here, the time scale can be described as even a 100 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, so etc. That depend on the ecological situations. Usually, the succession may be start with the bare rock or with the earlier existing community. The usually the any if you take any ecological succession, the plant community are the beginners for the ecological succession. So, if you look at the history in 1859, Henry David has written a book called The Succession of Forest Trees. So he has explained in his book the oak pine forest as the pioneer succession or the ecological succession studies. So like that the various scientists has explained about the ecological succession. The going to the characteristic of ecological succession, there is a progressive increasing in the total matter of the community. That means there is a tendency in increase the nutrient conservation as a slow loss of the nutrient, and number of trophic level will be increases in each succession level, and population of decomposer component became the significance. So and the community became the more diverse in terms of number of species and their balance. The community became more heterogeneous. So usually initial stages the community will be homogeneous, and in initial stages the ecological succession the simple food chain will be there, that is replaced with the complex food chain. So like that when the succession starts, their characteristic will also changes. The next is to process of succession. The process of succession that start with the alluvial deposit. That means, so here the deposition of the sand or a gravel slid by the rivers and the river valleys. So that's continuing this process. So once it start, next the estuaries that's deposition will occurs. So like the sand dunes will also occurs in the ecological deposition, or sometime maybe landslips, or maybe sometimes the scapes and erosion. So like that the various effect glaciers, volcanic eruptions. So like that the various process will be involved in the ecological succession. The next is the stages of ecological succession. In the ecological succession, the first, that's the pioneer community will be formed by the formation of the colonization process. In the colonization process, what happens? So usually there will be a bare rock area. In that, some of the spores of the cryptogamic plant or sometimes the seeds of the plant may come in from the other nearby communities, and they are interact with the other environmental factors, the wind, water, and the animals. So like that the colonization will be start. The once colonization start, the first step is called as a migration. So here what happens, the once the whatever the species in a nearby community, they will migrating to the new ecological areas. So if there is a bare pond is there and the water only the content as a basic sources, and later some of the seeds of the xerophyte or the hydrophytes will come in contact and start the growth of these hydrophytes. So like that, the first step is to migration, second is the ASIC, second step is here the interactions of the biotic and abiotic component will occurs, and the third one is the aggregation. So and last one is decomposition. So in the fourth step usually the ecological succession will be takes place. If you take any areas, so usually there are various factors that may be on the soil surfaces above the ground, maybe ecological succession take place in a different manner, and below the ground, so there is a different will be takes place. Next, going to the types of ecological succession. One is a primary succession and another one is a secondary succession. In the primary succession, what happens? The soil formation will be takes place by the some various ecological parameters, and this soil is converted into a humus, and once it's converted to humus, the start of the growing of some basic cryptogamic plant will be start just like a lichens. So the start will in these areas. So simply the primary ecological succession is nothing but the in a bare area ecological succession will start. That type of succession is referred as a primary ecological succession. The secondary succession means here in this type of ecological succession, earlier there will be a community and this community will be destroyed and that is converted into a new community. That's a secondary succession. Yes, just look at these pictures very easily how actually primary ecological succession will be takes place. There will be a bare area, in that the pioneer community or the lichen and mosses. The later that place is occupied the grasses and small herbs and the shrubs. So later large shrubs will be occupied and these converted into a, and these larger trees will converted into a next climax communities. So like that the primary succession will takes place. There will be a different layers of the soil will be occupied by the volcanic eruptions, landslide and the flooding. So later it was occupied by the different group of the plant just like lichen and mosses. And how actually this is a primary succession. There will be a bare rack, in that initially the lichens will go, later mosses will start and mosses will be completely occupied that region, and later that is they converted into help of the formation of humus, and later by the pteridophytes will be started to grow, and later small grasses and other plants will be started to grow, and later converted into shrubby areas, and so and later it comes small trees and the largest tree. This is how the sequential steps in the primary succession. So this is actually bare rack areas there, and initially lichens will form and small plants will be grow, and there will be a perennial herbs or the grass. Later the larger and small trees and the largest trees will start. That's the pioneer community, intermediate community and the climax community in the ecological succession. This is our example. Volcanic eruption will lead to the formation of primary succession. This is the second one example, and this is another one that's in an intermediate state, that's grassland formation. In the secondary succession, that begins with the already has a soil and was once the home of living organisms, that was converted to another community due to different ecological process. So usually this is how the secondary ecological succession will takes place. The example is in devastation of a forest fire at the Yellowstone National Park in America. So that is an example how actually earlier there is a pine forest is there that is destroyed due to the forest fire. This is how the forest fire completely destroyed, and this the destroyed condition. So after 1 year there will be a starting of the growth of small herbs and the weeds will start. So after 10 years there will be a small pinus and coniferous trees will started to grow, and later this is how after 20 years the changes will occur. So next going to difference between the primary and succession. So primary succession begins with the no lives. but the secondary succession followed by the removal of the earlier existing biota. And primary succession, no soil is present, but in the secondary succession already there will be a soil is present. Primary succession occurs in new areas, secondary succession occurs in old areas. The primary community, ecological succession community are the lichens and mosses. The secondary succession are the seeds and the root already present of the particular plants. The primary succession in that the biomass is very low, in the secondary succession biomass is very high. Next, go into the factor that will affect on the ecological succession. The mainly biotic and the abiotic factors will affect on the ecological succession. The abiotic factor may be topographic factors, soil, climatic and other factors. The soil is one of the very important factor in the ecological succession, and also the climatic factor just like rainfall, temperature, they will key role in the ecological succession. The biotic factors like pioneer species and intermediate and other species which will be interact with the environment, that is another important. The last is a final is a climax community, how the character of the climatic community will be changes. The vegetation of the tolerant environmental condition, it have a wide diversity and have the complex food chain, and usually there will be a climax stages replaced by the other small kind of changes, and it is a almost all type of life form will be occur in that areas. So this is we can call it as a final climatic communities. After all these find it out, so you will have a question. So is it ecological succession will stop at the end? So definitely there will be a continuous process in the ecological succession. The once reach the final community, so later maybe it reset or re-trigger the ecological succession process. It is a randomizedly, and it is again recycling, the process will be occurs. So like that the ecological succession will continuous and it will not stop at the particular point, in that the different layers will be formed. There are mainly two types of other ecological succession, that is the hydrox succession and the xerox succession. The example for the xerox succession is the succession start in the bare areas. So simply we can call it as a primary succession. And hydrox succession means here the succession is start with the water bodies. So if you take any water bodies, in that the ecological succession is starts, then it is called hydrox succession. So if the ecological succession as a base as a soil, then it is called xerox succession. The xerox succession, the pioneer communities are the lichens, and the climax community will be the forest. In between various intermediate stages will be committed out. So like that in the hydrox succession there is a water body will be there. The phytoplanktons are the pioneer communities, and finally the growth formed the some of the aquatic plant, and also the climax community will be the forest plants. So like that there will be a continuous sequence, and the changes will occur in the ecological condition. So based on that hydrox and xerox succession, if the ecological succession takes place in a bare rock areas, then it is called xerox succession. So if it is the ecological succession occurs in the water bodies, then it is called as a hydrox succession. In the hydrox succession various stages will come. That's pioneer communities, that's a climatic stage, woodland stage, sedge stages, and last the final climax community will be formed. So like that there is a continuous process in the ecological succession. So this is how the concept of ecological succession, and the how actually the ecological succession will help for the maintaining of ecological balance. I hope you will understand the concept of this ecological succession. Thank you.